Uh, one of my old military friends, somebody you know me talking about, always is sending me personal texts about things. He's got severe TDS. I know people don't like that term, but it's really true in his case. But the questions that he's asking are questions that other people want to know. I'll read it real quick. Now, he's addressing me. For someone so invested in military matters, you're being strangely quiet in your public posts about the embarrassments we're suffering regarding munitions shortages, Trump's new love affair with World War II era aircraft carrier tech, and our shift away from South Korea. So, is there anything that you would want to discuss about our so called shortages when it comes to munitions?
Well, actually, I look at that as being a good thing, Mike. First, there are people out there that say that we're involved with this war with Iran for the wrong reasons. There are many conspiracy theories out there that the only reason America's in this war with Iran is because we are friends with Israel and we are attempting to do Israel's dirty work. Now, I find that a very difficult concept to wrap my head around. I believe that Donald Trump is his own man, and I think throughout history, from the time Donald Trump emerged on the world stage, on the U.S. stage or the world stage, he's been pretty clear he's his own man. So to suggest that we're doing this war for other than the reasons that he says we are prosecuting this war, that is, to attempt to prohibit the theocracy of Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, which they have stated publicly and very, very frequently that they intend to use any weapons they have at their disposal to dispose of, to destroy the Satan and the great Satan, and that is Israel and the United States. So I look at this war and I say Donald Trump is trying to protect the United States of America from a nuclear threat, from a theocracy who believes it is their very religious duty to attack us. So, if you choose to believe that Donald Trump is fighting this war to avoid Iran from being able to attack us with nuclear weapons, which I generally think everyone would agree is a bad thing. Okay? Everyone would pretty much be on the side of we really don't want Iran to attack the United States of America with nuclear weapons. And if you accept that premise, then my answer to the scarcity of munitions is I really don't give a damn. Use every munition you have in order to stop Iran from achieving their goal of having a nuclear weapon, which they have stated again publicly and frequently to use against the United States of America. And by the way, people say, well, they can't send a ICBM to the United States. We can protect ourselves against that. See, that's not the way they would do it.
Yeah.
They'd put the damn dirty bomb in a suitcase or in a small trunk. They would ship it to Mexico or to Canada, and they would sneak it across the border in a surreptitious way that we wouldn't know it was there. And then they would take it to one of our most vulnerable targets that would do us the greatest amount of harm, and they would explode a dirty nuclear weapon at the location that would cause us the greatest damage in the longest period of time. It's not just, as people are uninitiated, it's not just the explosion and the devastation from the bomb, but it's the half-life of the radiation that would keep us from using that geography for decades, So no, when we talk about the embarrassment of running short on munitions, guess what? We can make more. There's no limitation on how many we can make, Mike. You say that we're going to stop Iran from attacking us with nuclear weapon. I don't care what it takes. You have an opinion on that?
Well, yeah. Well, I have a bunch of thoughts. So first, we have to ask if there's a shortage, why, and what are we talking about? So it's something that it's an internal memo leak that the president and others are denying. But let's say that it's real because it sounds plausible. No president is going to say, yes, we're short on munitions. First, why would we be short if we are? Let's see. Did the last series of presidents give a lot of our munitions away? Yeah. Now we're selling them, but either way, it's a drawdown. The other thing is Trump, when he was president, was always asking for more. And, it's not been reciprocated by other presidents to build up the military.
Or Congress, to be fair.
Well, yeah, to be fair, Congress. But then you have to say, okay, well, why would they say this? Because we know we have tons more munitions. See, when I'm not 100% sure, but in supply, you have your logistics set up for world conflicts. So we have a certain amount of munitions designated for maybe China invading Taiwan, a certain amount of munitions designated for the homeland. And we say we don't want to fall below these levels. And then we have the munitions for that theater. So could we theoretically say, okay,
Cross level? Sure.
yeah, we can pull some of at least the munitions protecting America to use over there and then replace those stocks. So it's not the crisis everybody thinks. Now, of course, China is looking at this and saying, well, when would be a good time to take Taiwan? Well, if we're having a little bit of munitions problem, it's then. But what is the, you might know this, what is the name of the act that Trump could institute about having manufacturing?
Yes. Yes.
The Defense Industrial Act or something?
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. The United States government takes over industry and forces them to make what we need.
Yeah, and we're not doing that. So if we were truly short, now they talked about it, he threatened it because Raytheon and I guess Grumman and
Look, we did that during COVID. We took over businesses and made them make those
ventilators and all sorts of stuff.
But see, Mike, here's the other aspect of this. You know what has happened since World War One?
Tell me.
Weapons have changed.
Oh yeah,
right. So when they say, "Well, we're running out of munitions," we've also learned that the munitions we have stockpiled are not necessarily the ones we need.
Right.
Because
let's get rid of them.
The technology has changed,
Yeah.
and there's new munitions, and there's new ways of prosecuting a war. And so using old munitions is not necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's either use them or lose them, right?
Right.
Because they're going to go to waste. They all have a shelf life. Okay, so what was his next question? Trump's new love affair with World War II era style aircraft. What he's talking about is the catapults that launched the jets being moved from electromagnetic back to steam.
Well, but there's more than that. Donald Trump announced a new initiative for battleships, for example. And battleships, of course, were thought to be obsolete since World War II, right? The battleship were the way we projected our power to various places throughout the world. And of course, once World War II was fought, we realized that, hey, having these aircraft all over the place were a lot better way to enforce our will. But again, I would argue that the prosecution of war has changed. So when you talk about going back to World War II style, it's what's more important, efficiency and surety of being able to prosecute the war, or what kind of technology we use. And again, before we had gasoline-powered cars, we had steam-powered cars. Well, guess what the gasoline-powered cars did? It eliminated the steam, right? Now we have electric-powered cars. But guess what? Electric isn't right for every application. So we still have gasoline-powered cars. So does it really matter what technology the military is using, as long as it's not something stupid like solar-powered tanks?
Yeah.
Really.
That's what Biden wanted to do, right? Solar-powered military vehicles.
Yep. Yeah. And, we had a conversation earlier about war games with Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And, the war that Ukraine is fighting with Russia has made Ukraine very, very adept, and they've made a lot of technology improvements in drone warfare. And that kind of warfare is, at least right now, looking more like current and future ways of winning than our old ways of tanks and aircraft.
Oh, yeah.
I think at one point in time I heard that Ukraine was manufacturing 9,000 drones a month. That's a lot of power projection, force power projection, especially in something that costs a couple of $1,000s. Now, here's a question I would throw when we're talking about World War II. We have Patriot missiles. We also have aircraft that shoot warheads from the sky. Aircraft have missiles and various. I won't get into all the numerology and technology but the point is that those missiles that we currently use, both ground and air, are very, very expensive. They can be replaced by these much smaller, much less expensive, drones that can do. It's not 100%, but basically the same kind of thing. And if you shoot down a drone with a $1.2 million missile, are you really winning the battle? Obviously, you want to win regardless of the cost. So I'm not trying to put it in cost, in the forms of dollars. But when we look at World War II technology, does it really matter? I mean, is that the question? What is the technology that is the most secure, the most efficient, the most reliable, and the one that gets the job done? I don't care if it comes from the Civil War.
Yeah. So, well, I understand the reason they wanted to go back to the steam catapults on the aircraft carrier is because of reliability and repairability.
Yep.
We're talking supply chain issues again.
Yep.
We're also talking time to repair something.
Yep.
And I was one of those guys in the military that had to repair some stuff.
Yep.
So we got away from a lot of the intricate repairs and we just swapped out parts because it was so much easier. Everything became more modularized. So you could just easily just replace things. But now the other side of the argument is the electromagnetic launchers are easier on the aircraft. So the steam ones cause a lot of vibration and thrust.
Yep.
And of course that the vibration can cause aircraft failure or maintenance.
Yeah.
Things come loose. People don't realize how many loose things there are in any aircraft. So anyway, it's a crapshoot, and I understand why Trump said it. Now, I'm not sure people were arguing that they're only doing this, I guess, on the newer ones that they're manufacturing. But I guess on one ship they got so far, but Trump said no, tear that out. Going to cost some money. Who am I to say? I don't know, and I don't think the person who's asking this question has the background. The guy was a freaking pilot.
You used the term reliability, Mike, and that was what I was talking about earlier in my comments. What difference does it make the technology in war? What you really want is surety that things are going to work. Does it really matter, A, what it costs, or two, what technology? What you really want is surety that it's going to work.
Right, and the steam launchers have historically just been, rock solid. But everything has issues.
Absolutely.
They break, but they can repair.
Trade-offs. You and I talking about trade-offs before?
Yeah.
There's always a trade-off.
Yep, everything's a trade. That was Thomas Sowell.
Yeah.
He's pointed that out on economics, and it's true here. And what about the shift away from South Korea? That's an easy one.
Do you want to take it first?
No, you got it.
Well, here's the thing, Mike. We have 35,000 troops or something at the DMZ in between South Korea and North Korea. Why are they there? Well, they're there as a tripwire, right? Obviously, we don't want North Korea to invade South Korea. The American public is loath to go to war for most any unreasonable manner. Would we really go to war just to protect South Korea? Maybe, maybe not. You know what we will go to war for?
Dead Americans.
Dead Americans will go to war for.
Yeah.
And, first, I think what you must address is what is our national interest in North or South Korea? That part of the world is dominated influence-wise by China. North Korea clearly is a client of the nation of China. South Korea stands as a beacon of freedom and hope and, a capitalist system. All of those are good things. But what are America's vital interests in South Korea? Japan, for that matter. Do we have vital interests in Japan? That's half a world away. And I understand we're a global world now, global economy, all the
interdependencies.
all of those interdependencies. But I guess the point I'm trying to get to is this. Donald Trump received a lot of bad press recently for how he treated NATO. I don't disagree with Donald Trump's position.
Nope.
If we have an agreement with any nation state and we say we will do this if you do this, and that nation state doesn't hold up their part of the bargain, should we be suckers and continue to hold up our end of the bargain? In my opinion, just like if you and I make an agreement, you expect certain things from me and I expect certain things from you. Because you're a man of your word, because I trust you, I know that you're going to follow through. Well, I think what Donald Trump is saying, and for that matter, the Department of War is saying, hold up your end of the bargain, or maybe we won't hold up ours. Yeah, I remember there was a NATO conference, and Donald Trump said, "Look, pay your 2%, or who knows, we may not defend you when the time comes." And the hue and cry from the NATO European countries were, "You won't defend us? You won't protect us?" And Trump said, "Look, are you paying your 2% or not? Pay your 2%, and we'll hold up our end of the bargain. Don't pay your 2%. Are we under any obligation to do so?" And now, of course, they're ratcheted up to 5%. And I think that's fair. There were so many times in the past when the United States of America has jumped in and very honestly saved our allies from very, very difficult times. Would Europe be speaking German today if it wasn't for the United States?
Yeah, they would.
Well, again, I'm not trying to be, arrogant about the whole thing, but the truth of the matter is that when America entered World War II, not only do we change the tide of the war, not only do we arm all of our allies with the munitions and the weapons of war that they needed to help win that war, but in a large part, without the American soldiers, the Allies would have lost. I don't know how you call it different, right? I don't know how you parse that and say that wouldn't have happened. And so, yes, America has done some wonderful, great things in the past. And I think that if you are a South Korean peninsula that needs the protection of America to stop not only the North Koreans, but also the nation of China from dominating you, then you ought to, be a good neighbor to the United States. And, as long as we have those agreements in place, we should honor them. But it comes back to the thing I said first. What's America's national interest in the peninsula of South Korea? When we entered, by the way, that was not an American war. You understand that was a
NATO operation.
Not a NATO, but a United Nations.
Oh, yeah, UN.
So I guess what I'm saying is our reason for fighting the Korean War in the 1950s was to halt the progression of communism.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still our stated national interest?
We're letting it go here in America.
My only point is that we need to evaluate what is in the best interest of the United States of America, and most importantly, its citizens, its people, because our Constitution is clear. The primary responsibility of the central government, the federal government, is to protect and defend the citizens, defend the homeland. Okay, so I'm not real sure how defending South Korea is in our national interest. But I accept the decisions of our national leaders.
Yeah, well, back to NATO, which is sort of kind of related to the same type of back and forth between Trump and these countries, is the Secretary General of NATO praised Trump because all previous presidents, I guess, pointed out the same thing. Hey, you're not ponying up what you're supposed to.
Yeah.
But, Trump is such, all the negative things that people like to say about his personality. He's brash, he's embarrassing. But really, he embarrassed the hell out of them.
Yes, he did.
And no other president, with polite rhetoric could have made the kind of points that he did.
Agreed.
Now, when it comes to South Korea, again, Pete Hegseth and others have been asking for Congress for more money. So I don't know this to be the case, but sometimes budgets can be moved. I'm not sure how much Foal Eagle and Team Spirit, the exercises in Korea, cost us. I'm sure it goes into the billions of dollars. At least some of that money can be recouped to establish, more money for munitions and things like that too. And of course, South Korea wants to sit there like all the European countries and cry about gas prices because, believe it or not, our gasoline prices were higher in the past than they are now, using $26. Everybody forgets about that.
Yep.
So really, you're not paying any more for gas in the past than in the past. But since they want to cry, but they don't want to participate because we started this without consulting them. Like you could have talked to them and still had it be a surprise. People don't understand. Surprise attacks are surprise attacks for a reason. So anyway, I don't know if that's going to answer my TDS
Again, Mike,
friend.
I go back to what I said, the nation's national interest. Our national interest would not be served by sharing that kind of information with any of our allies.
Yeah.
Now, Donald Trump did ask many of our NATO allies for assistance going into the Iranian conflict.
Mhm.
Most of those nations declined, okay?
They're even preventing us from using their bases, not just declining to help, but actually hampering our ability to prosecute the war.
Yet, who benefits from Iran not successfully having a nuclear weapon?
Europe first.
Every single one of those countries that are whining and complaining. You didn't tell us. You didn't negotiate, or you didn't consult with us before you did that. Guess what? America is going to do what is in her best interest, what is in her national interest, regardless of what you say, do, or think. And do you know why? Because when the shit hits the fan, we're the ones that have to pull your bacon out of the fire. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I mean that as a matter of fact way. So many nations that we are allied with have allowed bad things to happen that are not in their national interest. You look at the nation of Spain, you look at the nation of Portugal, you look at the nation of England, you look at what's happening, you look at what is going on in Germany with their unfettered illegal, they don't call it illegal, with inviting people who are not European with different attitudes and different ideas and different ways of life. Already those nations, many of them, are on a road to destruction.
Mhm.
The nation of France doesn't look like France anymore. The nation of England doesn't look like England anymore. So America, founded on Judeo-Christian principles, Ronald Reagan used the terminology, the shining city on the hill. I remember seeing an interview one time with someone who had fled Cuba, the communist island, the communist government of Cuba that was, so unfair and so harsh on its people. And they interviewed this Cuban, and he was talking about America, and he said, "I was lucky. There was America that I could flee to." He said, if America doesn't exist, where do we go? And I think ultimately that's what we have to rely on. Whenever I was a wee lad, one of the things my dad taught me, because he expected his boys to be men, I mean manly men, right? And I'm not claiming to be that, but one of the things my father taught me was, you need to take care of yourself first. Because if you're not okay, you can't help anyone else. And I guess I would apply that simple lesson that a father taught his son to the United States of America. If the United States of America is not okay, if we're not strong, if we're not that shining city on the hill, then can we really be in a position to help anyone else?
No.
And the answer to that is clear. Yeah. And I think that really answers your friend. Why does America do what it has to do? Typically, one of my favorite quotes from any world leader was Winston Churchill, and he says, "America will always do the right thing, after they've done everything else and it didn't work out, or after they've tried everything else. And I think sometimes that really does quantify and describe the United States of America. We're not always right. We don't always do the right thing. And sometimes we do dumb things, and sometimes we do arrogant and imperfect things. But you know what? At the end of the day, again, who was our Secretary of Defense from Jamaica under President Bush? I can picture him in my head and name
From Jamaica.
Yeah, well, he was Jamaican. He wasn't born in Jamaica.
Oh,
he was born in New York, but he's Jamaican parents. And I can see the man. He was Secretary of Defense when we fought the Gulf War, and you know what he said in the United Nations one time is America has gone many places and fought wars for many different people, and the only thing we've asked in return is enough geography, enough dirt to bury our dead. And that's what's different in America than any other nation who are what they call colonial powers, right? Other nations have gone places and then claimed them for their own. And what America has done is gone places, made those, won their wars, made their nations better, and then came back home. The only thing we asked in return was enough dirt to bury our heroes, the men and women of the armed forces who paid the ultimate price.
Yeah.
I'll think of his name as soon as we're done.
Yeah, probably. I'll look it up and try and get it in the Chiron or something. But yeah, you think about, when I first started going to Europe, I noticed they all had 220 power. And, why was the electric different than America? It's because we rebuilt it or helped them rebuild after the Second World War. And they had high-speed internet before we did.
Yeah.
So we sacrificed a lot.
Look at the nation of Japan. Look at the nation of Japan prior to World War II, and then look at the nation of Japan today. Starting after World War II, when MacArthur he instituted many cultural, governmental, political, economic changes in the nation of Japan when they were under military rule, and all of them had made the nation of Japan, in some ways, the mini-me to the United States of America. And I don't want to insult them that way, but it made them a very different nation, one of which was an economic and influential powerhouse in the world of nations. And that was not by accident. That was because of the changes that we instituted after World War II.
And it's so funny you say that in relation to Trump, because if you look back at the old Rona Barrett interviews, he was always talking about Japan instead of China because that was before GATT. Well, GATT had been around, I guess, but we hadn't started shipping all of our jobs over to China.
Yeah.
We already shipped them over to Japan.
Yeah.
We used to call it Jap scrap back in the old days.
I used to call it Jap crap, but same idea. Yeah, after World War II, they started doing all kinds of manufacturing, parroting, and copying the technologies that we had already created, and eventually they became very good at it. And guess what China does today? They steal our intellectual property and they copy our ideas.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of thing. But what does our economic system, what does our nation, with its great freedoms protected by the Constitution, along with the economic freedom that's guaranteed by capitalist economic system, it creates incentive to come up with new ideas. Who was it that coined the phrase, build a better mousetrap and the world will be the path to your door? We are the place where the better mousetrap is invented.
Yeah.
That's because of our combination of political system, governmental system, freedom, all the freedoms guaranteed by the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, plus our economic system that says, hey, if you do something better, we'll pay you more money for it. If your future and my future aligns and we collaborate, we both are successful, we both get more money. And there are very few combinations, and that's what makes us a powerhouse. And you and I have had this conversation before. China will never be able to ultimately defeat America because their political system, that is communism, doesn't allow for the freedom of thought that allows the ingenuity and the innovation that our system does. That's why, they're very good at making things better, but they steal the ideas from us first.
Mm-hmm. In a lot of cases, that's for sure. Well, Have we beat this up enough? I think we're over a half hour into it. Yeah,
I guess we have. It was a good conversation.
I thought so.
We'll have to give your buddy, name to not be mentioned, whose name shall not be mentioned. We'll have to give your buddy a call and say, hey, watch this.
Oh, he doesn't want to talk.
I know he
He
does.
won't come on with us.
No.
He doesn't want to talk in the telephone. I don't know.
But tell him we answered his questions. He just has to watch.
Yeah, that's what we'll do.
Mac and Mike
Out.
out.